Hello friends and welcome to a position 4 tier list. It's the same as the position 5 tier list, but now for the soft supports. Again, we're going to emphasize the pro scene versus the pubs, and we'll kind of skip over some of these heroes who are repeats. A couple of them play like both position 4 and 5, touch on it lightly, but that way we can talk about new stuff if we just brush over them. For our S tier heroes, the first one I want to highlight is Tiny. He is very good right now. You'll see him banned out, partly because you can open with him as a flex pick. He could be just this fantastic position 4, but we have seen some mid Tinies and offlane Tinies. I think mid Tiny probably looks second best than offlane Tiny, but 4 support is his best role right now. The reason being is that Tree Grab has improved his laning stage. Tiny used to be pretty bad at laning, but now with Tree Grab, you grab a couple stats. It's not too bad. You just like out trade people with the extra damage, or you just get a bunch of denies. You can throw your tree to like snipe couriers. That's a little ridiculous. It's a one hit courier kill from like 5 miles away. Not that that's what you're planning for, but it's something you can do. So Tree Grab really helped his laning stage, and then after that, you're kind of back to classic Tiny. Avalanche, Toss, just really good. Initiate for your teams. Avalanche is so far. I don't understand. But double melee is a little weird. A lot of offlaners right now are melee, but you can kind of get by it because there's a lot of combos there, like Centaur, Avalanche, Toss, Hoof Stomp, Double Edge. It's actually really powerful. And you don't have to be as worried about, oh, it's 2 melees because of the way like Tree Grab works and like tossing people out of position. So it's a little awkward, but he's one of the best melee supports to have in a double melee lane, and of course you can just do the whole creep drag shenanigans if you need to. He's also really good at roaming to the mid lane for the power runes, something that we see a lot of supports do right now at the pro level, and some supports you kind of get there and you can't really do much, you die potentially to the mid laner, but Tiny with the Avalanche Toss combo can actually fight for the rune and possibly toss the mid laner away, the enemy mid laner, to your mid laner where maybe they can be killed. Right, so he's a great hero for that. You see a lot of teams like to pick him up. From there, it's like the Tiny, Blink Dagger Rush, other utility items. If the game goes super late, he scales, but that's not really why people are picking him. It's just like a nice extra benefit to him. Next up, I want to put Bat Rider in here, which I talked about in the position 5 video, so no repeating myself too much, but just a very strong laner, and it's a lot easier to play a greedy playstyle with Bat Rider position 4. So first of all, the small camp, easier to kill with Firefly compared to the hard camp if you're trying to kill that as the position 5. So you can steal that away much easier, and then you can still play aggressively on the enemy's map because you're farming their jungle as position 4 Bat Rider versus position 5 Bat Rider, who's kind of like farming your own jungle. That feels like a little weirder. So position 4 Bat just works out better. He can also stack the Ancient and Hard Camp, which is an extremely valuable stack compared to whatever position 5 Bat Rider can, right? There's like maybe some hard medium camps you can double stack depending on what side you're on, but consistently as position 4, that Ancient Hard stack, super value. Also very valuable for Shadow Demon, who's also going into the S tier, also a top support pick in the position 5 video. Same deal, does all the stuff as position 4, as position 5. But this time a little easier because there's more offlaners who are likely to combo with you. For example, Mars, you can disrupt into Spear. Kunkka, disrupt into Torrent. Centaur, disrupt into Hoof Stomp. I think you get the idea. There's a lot more with that, and then that Ancient Hard Camp stack, again, fantastic. You rotate to the mid runes this time, disrupt the enemy mid, grab the rune, whatever, run away. Position 4, just a little easier to play than position 5, and that's why I'm going to put him in the S tier here. That's all I'm going to put in the S tier for now. Moving to the A tier, we have Lion and Techies, which were in the position 5 video, so I won't repeat myself too much. They pretty much do the same stuff. Arguably more aggressive potential here with the offlaners. The double stack, more valuable here as well. But these types of heroes will play the lane a little bit more. And since we're saving time not repeating ourselves, I guess we can talk a little bit more about why some supports can play 4 and 5. I don't know if it's coincidence or part of the reason they are good, but teams can first pick a Lion, and then you don't really know, right? It's like, is that position 5? Is that position 4? Like, what can I draft? Are they going to pick a different support that's going to then counter what I picked, right? So a lot of these supports who can flex are very popular with the pro teams for that reason. And they kind of do the same thing. Like, yes, you probably end up with a bit more gold as a position 4 than a position 5 for various reasons, like less need to buy observers and sentries and smokes and all that consumable stuff. You have more room to roam and maybe do a little bit of farming. But ultimately, like, strong lane kill potential, right? Like, I'm gonna be really annoying with mana drain and, you know, buy a blink. And like, oh, I'm gonna play greedy farm. I'm gonna disrupt save people, right? So many of these heroes who can play both roles do the same stuff. Position 5 only heroes tend to be more focused on babysitting, and it's harder for them to like move around and do stuff. They tend to be slow heroes as well. Position 4s, the ones who are really good at roaming, such as Tiny, and anyone who needs to hit like a blink timing, like Tiny, they tend to only play position 4s because they're more likely to get gold. They can do the things like creep cutting. If their lane's not good, that position 5s don't have access to. If he roams mid, he can actually get something done compared to, like, let's throw Crystal Maiden, right? Crystal Maiden is not really a position 4 hero. You'll see some teams occasionally flex when they really want a different pick. But for the most part, she's not a great roaming hero or a position 4 hero because she's so slow. She is so slow. And yes, she can kind of still be aggressive from the position 4 role, but you give her a lot of money, and what does she really do with it? Like, yeah, there's some greedy builds like BKB, AGs, stuff like that, but what's the, like, small short-term item that's super powerful? Like, if you put a blink on Crystal Maiden, how different does that feel compared to these heroes where the greed potential is much easier, like the blink Bat Rider into like 4-staff, BKB, stuff like that? They really scale up into some terrifying heroes, but Crystal Maiden scaling up is like the same as a position 5, and she's slow, and she doesn't have like that much roaming potential, stuff like that. Like, that's why she tends to just be a position 5. Moving on from there, Hoodwink has been a very popular position 4. She is very strong in the lane between Acorn Shot and Bushwhack. There's a lot of combos with your offlaner. It doesn't really have to be a combo. It's just like, you have a stun, I have a stun. So whoever hits the stun first, the other guy just gets to follow up. So there's just a lot of like aggressive potential there, long range to poke, and then eventually commit with the Acorn Shot, which is the build right now. It's like a 4-1-4 build, which sounds funny, but it just lets you spam out Acorn Shot from really far away, and 1 point in Bushwhack is kind of enough. And so you'll see greedy builds from Hoodwink. It used to be Mage Slayer in the last patch. That's dropped off a lot. You will sometimes see Glimmer Capes from Hoodwinks. It makes her like super hard to catch. She can do a lot of like split pushing, and thanks to the extra cast range from your E, it's actually easier to use the Glimmer Cape on allies from super far away. That's a more defensive utility focused build. You will also see a lot of like Gleipnir builds from support Hoodwinks. Support Hoodwink, right? But I mean, actually, right? It's a lot of damage, farm potential, split push, but you also provide utility from the roots. You don't see Hoodwink as a position 5 as much because Acorn Shot inevitably shoves in the lane. And yeah, that's kind of okay to do nowadays, but you don't want it to be like your only option. And as a position 4, it's not as big of a deal to use Acorn Shot to harass, and like if it pushes, it's fine because it'll just die to the tower and reset right in the same spot. Rubik is in a similar vein where Fade Bolt always pushes the lane, is like uncontrollable. Now, in the past, we actually did go through a phase where position 5 Rubik was a little bit more popular. Things were a little different. The support roles were, it's tough to say this, but it was easier to hit level 6 as a position 5 at that time, and Rubik was a better hero at that time. Now, he is still generally good. He likes to hit level 6 early and get those spell steals going. But because he is less, I don't know, overpowered, he's back to like just being a position 4 rather than both a 4 and a 5. It's kind of, I don't know, it's a little hard to explain. But once you get a good game going, it's kind of the same. Like, he's just a solid hero. He's a very good preventative pick. That's probably not the best way to put that. But like, if you pick Rubik early, the enemy team doesn't really want to pick Magnus or Enigma. Those two heroes, kind of popular. There's other heroes that have good steals that Rubik can grab. So he's like up here, but only certain teams do. So I'd kind of be okay moving him down to the B tier. Some teams really seem to like Rubik. Other teams like aren't really valuing him. Terrorblade position 4, same as position 5. We can kind of brush over it. There's really not that much different here. These are the vast majority of position 4 picks. They're, I would say, like a step above the other picks for the most part. And so, I mean, I'm kind of pulling this number out of my butt without real statistics to back this up. I'd say like 70% of games, if a team has the option to pick one of these position 4s, they're going to go for it rather than any of these position 4s. But of course, there's some exceptions where some teams like a certain hero, or these have been banned, picked out, they have a different strategy, stuff like that. So that brings us to the B tier. Tusk, I do think Tusk is pretty good with the attack slow aura, and I think if there were more ranged offlaners, Tusk would be super, super popular. But many of the melee offlaners right now, one, double melee is awkward to run, but Tiny with his tree toss, I think it's easier to play that double melee than someone like Tusk, who kind of has to commit in the typical melee way, which is like literally just run in. He doesn't have that extra attack range, that tree toss, stuff like that. He doesn't have overwhelming attack damage like Tiny, although the attack slow is pretty nice for Tusk, but the ranged heroes just like kind of poke him from afar, step back, stuff like that. So it's harder to play Tusk. Still possible, especially with like good avalanches, or sorry, good, right? Like I'm thinking of Tiny, right? Good ice shards, good snowballs, stuff like that. It's possible, just harder. Many of the popular offlaners are also spell damage combos like Timbersaw and Centaur, so they don't really use the attack slow of Tag Team that well, or I should say the bonus damage from Tag Team as well as just like, oh, here's another fantastic burst combo. Let's just put our burst together and just kill people, right? So there's like a little bit of mismatch in what Tusk wants to combine with, which is why I say like if he had the ranged offlaners, it's easier to work with them. Pugna is very much the same as a position 5 Pugna. I personally like Pugna 4 a little bit more, but I think people play him as a 5 a little bit more. I think it's easier to start blasting the tower and be like greedy aggressive in that way, which I think in pub games will be a little easier to run than in the like the pro scene. I think they like just having Pugna 5 get through the lane and then like buff up teammates with the ult, like keeping everyone topped up. Grimstroke soft support's very similar to hard support Grimstroke, but I think a little easier because you're more likely to have lane partners who actually want to Inkswell run in. But the downside is you're so close to the enemy tower that there's not as much room to run them down. So you kind of have to get the lane to pull back, and then you can look for Inkswell aggressive combos. Gyro 4, very similar to 5 Gyro, but I will say you're more likely to see Gyrocopter 4 start with Flat Cannon, because Flat Cannon is also an ability that shoves out the lane and you can't really control it. But it's really good harass because it's like 4 attacks, I think. 4 attacks. So that's essentially like 200 damage you're doing to both heroes, all the creeps, shove it in, hit the levels first, and you don't care that you shove in the lane because it dies to the tower and then just resets. 4 Venge is the same, and you know what? We'll just knock it out real quick. 5 Phoenix is very similar. 5 Marcy is similar to 4 Marcy, but maybe a little more aggressive potential from Marcy rather than just like life stealing with the carry to get through the laning stage. Nature's 4, very similar to 5 Nature's. Mirana 4, not so common nowadays because 5 Mirana is a little better, but 4 Mirana is essentially whatever old Mirana you had in mind. You just like the arrow combo, roaming potential, like that's all still there. I think people just don't think she's as strong as she used to be as a position 4, and that what she is good at, she kind of does as a position 5, so you don't really need to give her the extra farm priority of a position 4. Jumping back to Monkey King, people playing standard Monkey King position 4 is not that common. Like some teams do it when they want to flex the Monkey King pick, because Monkey King can be a very good carry and mid in certain matchups, but if it ends up not being such a great matchup, you put it in the position 4. Some teams just much better with the Monkey King and prioritize it, others don't. Some teams do the weird courier sniping, which I made a video on recently if you want to check out. That's very limited. I've only seen a few people do it because it's so different, it's so out there that it really takes the whole team at the professional level to really understand it. Those teams like the Monkey King support, believe it or not, if you don't run that strategy, other teams, they don't put as much emphasis on the Monkey King support. So if you don't run that strat, and you don't have really strong Monkey King players, I would move him down a tier because he's a little harder to run than other position 4s right now, and his laning stage just feels a little awkward, which is why courier sniping is kind of nice, I think. But as a melee 4 right now, you tend to run into that double melee issue, and it's harder for you because you got to get the Jingu stacks, right? Or you got to leap in, which puts yourself in danger. Compare that to the other melee heroes who are up here, like Tiny I already talked about, but Terrorblade as a position 4, you're like, well, why can he do it? Because reflection spam is so good, and you reflect, you get the full value out of it, and then you can choose to fight from there. Monkey King, he can hit creeps the same way as Terrorblade can, great, but to actually trade with people, you got to get close, you got to get 4 Jingu mastery hits before you actually get the effects of that. he is perfectly fine throwing out the reflection, which is practically free for him, and then like 1 or 2 auto attacks, that's fine. I got tons of value. Monkey King did not get that value. It's also why Marcy 4 right now is pretty difficult because Rebound is such a short-ranged ability. I forgot to say it as we went through each hero individually, so let's just knock out the S, A, and B tier right here. If you want to play these heroes in your pub games, which ones are, likely to reflect this? So Tiny, definitely. Lion, Techies, Hoodwink. I'd say all of these heroes you can replicate what the pros do fairly easily. I think Rubik can be a little tricky depending what heroes get picked. In the pro scene, you kind of, due to the drafting, you kind of know what you're getting a little bit more. So Rubik can be a little hit or miss sometimes when the drafts are not good, but if you do want to play him, should be okay. These two, good, but it's a little risky because while you're trying to do greedy stacks, like Bat Rider stacking for yourself, Shadow Demon, you're stacking, hoping the court will go do it, and then you get the lane for a little bit. That part's a little iffy, but if you're willing to communicate, if you're at a high enough rank where you think it'll happen, they're great. I especially like Bat Rider, the greedy playstyle and the high activity. Terrorblade, definitely doable in your pubs. Just be careful of getting reported. For the B tier, you don't have to worry so much about the whole, double melee meta, stuff like that, right? It helps a lot. There's a lot more flexibility in pub games because there's a lot more mistakes in pub games and people aren't following the meta. So if you want to play a hero like Tusk, I think he's really good in pub games. I think Pugna can be good. I prefer Pugna 4 in pubs because you can just start blasting the tower very early on. And even if you do miss out on people who can make use of the healing from your ultimate, you can take towers really quickly, which is nice. Position 5 Pugna, it's a little harder to do that. Grimstroke scares me because of the coordination. I think Gyro 4 is really good. Venge 4 I find a little weak for my taste, but if you like her, feel free to go for it. Monkey King, standard Monkey King, fine-ish. I think harder to pull off than others. The weird Monkey King, I tried in my pubs. You can see my VODs. I didn't have a good enough game where I put a video on this channel yet, but if you want to see the VOD attempts, I will link it. They were okay. I have a winning rate right now, so I'm scared to recommend that to you guys because I don't want you guys to get reported on my behalf. But if you want to try it, now's the time, right? Phoenix 4 is fine. Marcy 4, you got to be really good at Marcy. These two, they're fine. So C and D tier heroes at the pro scene, you will just very rarely see these heroes. It's just kind of like the way the drafting is right now. You'd much rather have a very safe Hoodwink pick than a Nyx pick, just based on the heroes that are popular right now. But for your pubs, the whole meta thing, right, doesn't matter. So I know those of you guys are asking why is this hero so low? So Shadow Shaman, pretty good for pubs if you want to run it. Skywrath, same deal. I think Nyx is good in pubs. Snapfire, hit or miss a little bit. Overall, she offers a lot, but you do need a little bit of coordination with the cookies and with someone else to initiate so you can land your ultimate. So if the draft has that, I think she does shine, but a lot of times I've picked Snapfire and then I get a ranged offlaner and no stuns and I'm my game is so hard, So I'm a little iffy on that. Wind Ranger feels a little greedy, but I think you could do it. These two are a little weird, but Centaur, easier to run than Doom support, but you can do it if you want it. Muerta, you got to hit your skill shots, but you can play her. ET, there's only 6 of you guys interested in ET. If you can play ET, you can do it. If you can't, don't. Many of these heroes still work as a position 4 in pubs. They've just dropped off. Leshrac, I think, if you guys want to try it, I think Leshrac 4 I had some success with. I don't know if there's really any other here I'd super recommend. Yeah. Now, if I didn't list a hero, they're one of the 75 not visible. They're probably in this C or D tier where they kind of work in pubs, but you're really not seeing them in the pro scene outside of rare exceptions. Maybe I forgot a hero, but I kind of went through here and looked at it. So I think I covered the vast majority of them. Thank you for watching. I know this one was faster because we kind of skipped over it. I do recommend you watch the Position 5 video, even if you're only a Position 4 player, because knowing the popular heroes in both roles is helpful, but that might also just be me plugging my own video. So, if you want the guides on it, again, links in the descriptions. You can find it all there. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in another video. Hephaestus has been working very hard on these videos. He's a Pudge player for those of you that want to relate to him. So, maybe that's worth a like and subscribe for his hard work. Just a thought, putting it out there. All right. No? Okay. Bye.